Shalom, people. This is Brother Lyles coming at you with another video. And I know it's been a while since I used the StreamYard, but they had some new features on it that I wanted to uh, check out. So I decided to do this video using StreamYard. For all of you that are my old subscribers and all my new subscribers, I want to thank you for tuning in to the Contending for the Faith channel. And for our lesson today, I want to continue to ask you to give this video and all videos on my channel a thumbs up. I want you to also share them, and also would ask you to please subscribe to the channel. We want to also ask you just to continue to pray for my strength in Yahuwah and my family and all of the other viewers of this channel. Pray for their strength because we are going through a time of testing here in America and throughout the world for the global Black people. But the Bible did say no weapon formed against you should prosper. It did not say that people would not try to bring you down or to cut you down, but that if Yah is on your side, those plans and those weapons that they would try to use against you would not prevail. And so with that in mind, we want to talk about something um, kind of along those lines of this things that we think are actually um, destroying us, when in actuality, the Most High Yah could be using certain things that happen in your life as actually something to build you up. We want to talk about discerning the source of division, satanic schemes, or Yahuwah's divine purpose. Division and disagreement among believers is not uncommon in the life of a true believer. However, source, this is the caveat of that when Yah is dividing uh, relationships and maybe partnerships and different things. The thing is, we must understand where is it coming from? What is the source of the vision that is happening right now? What is the source that's causing the division? Some are satanically inspired to destroy the unity of the body, while others are sovereignly allowed by Yah or even initiated by Yahuwah. We're going to see that in discerning the source is critical for your and my spiritual maturity, for wise leadership, and faithful obedience. And we want to start out today by first looking at the necessity of discernment in times of division. As I said, we want to go to 1 John 4:1. First, but test the spirits to see whether they are from Yahuwah. We must, as I said, deal in the spirit of discernment. As I was saying to a family member the other day, one of the most neglected gifts of the spirit that believers don't operate in is the gift of discernment. And that family member said something that was true. He said, maybe if the body of believers, assemblies, operate in the spirit of discernment, understanding, if a person is a devil or if a person is getting into stuff they shouldn't do, then maybe many of these mega churches and just churches or assemblies or whatever in whatever capacity you want to would not have a lot of people in them, because people would point you out. They would see you out. It's not to say that we are without sin, as we understand the main thing that's brought across every time is when people want to try to help people get their life back on track, because they say that they are following Yah, but they see that they aren't. And then you try to point something out, is that they will say, we are all, none of us are without sin. Let him that is without sin cast the first stone. And so that's probably another reason why people do not operate in the spirit of discernment, is because they don't want to be considered to be the bad person. They don't want to be considered to be the person that is judgmental. But in the case of understanding, when you see divisions happening in your life, you need to operate in the spirit of the division, because sometimes it could be that Yah is trying to help you to come up in your life, or even that he is trying to save your life. Think about all the different times in history that you have read about relationships that people entered into, that at the beginning it seemed like it was the best of things, and it actually ended up being detrimental to those people. A case in point we should look at, and it's not a spiritual example, but it is an example. Look at the situation with going on between Donald Trump and Elon Musk right now. At the beginning of their partnership, if you want to call it that, we know that Donald Trump was low on cash for his during his election, and here comes Elon Musk with 200 some $million that he invested in the Trump a re-election in his re-election, and they was best of friends. Elon Musk going around, hopping on the stage, like a bunny rabbit, and wearing MAGA hats and all these things, but a lot of pundits, and I was one of them, that said this thing is not going to last. They're not going, because their egos were too big. But they made it seem like this was going to be a lifelong partnership, and you seen Elon Musk show up at the White House with his son, and then of course he allowed Elon Musk to create this thing called the Doge, and he was just bragging on all the money that Elon Musk and the Doge was saving. And Elon Musk, never had a bad word for Trump. He got South Africa and make up all kinds of lies and stuff. And it seemed like, to some, at least to the MAGA, that hey, this is a partnership made in heaven or whatever. But I knew that it was not going to last. And now you see the division. You see the division. It is so sharp now that right out the bat, Elon Musk, once he departed from the Doge, he departed from the White House, he was already pouncing on Trump, and now Trump is pouncing on him. There was no discernment or anything used in that. It's just that both of them were thinking, I can use the other one. And people that could see, understood this thing was not going to last. There was going to be division. Now, let's flip that to the spiritual. The believer must not automatically assume that every disagreement is demonic, meaning in your life, when certain things come. Okay, I'll give you another example. When I was part of the Christian church, one of the things that you will always hear in different churches is if you was a pastor or a minister or whatever, and then people would, they would have the altar call, for salvation or prayer for healing or whatever. And people would come up, and those that wanted to be saved or acknowledge that they needed salvation. And then they led them through the prayer, and they acknowledged that they had been saved and all these different things. You would always hear at the end where the preacher would say, well, if you got saved at this church, then you need to stay at this church. And I used to, when I was in the Christian church, I used to believe that. But as time went on, as I was even while I was still in the Christian church, I came to disagree with that. And the reason I came to disagree with that is that sometimes you look at the personality of that church and the personality of that person, or even let's just look at the ethnicity. I can remember one time when I was in Germany, and I was big into quote unquote soul winning. I have a little bit different understanding about it now, but understanding from the point of view that I had then, I used to bring a lot of people to the church that I was a member of. And one time I used to bring all colors. It didn't matter. And I remember one time I brought a guy that was in my unit. It was a white guy, a Caucasian guy, and he had got saved and everything. But I brought him to church, to the church where I was going. And he kind of liked it at first, but I could tell he was just a little uncomfortable or whatever. But back at that time, I was drinking the Kool-Aid, so I was believing, oh yeah, if you came here with me and and everything, you need to keep coming here with me, and that way I'll know, we'll know that you're saved if you come to this. Maybe a month he was coming with me and stuff, but you could tell he was not used to the music, none of that stuff. But I know that he was a believer. I know that he had got saved. He had got saved out some pretty bad stuff too. But anyway, make a long story short, he came to me and he told me, he said, look, you know, uh, I enjoy the fellowship and everything. He said, but I'm looking for something a little different. And at that time, being me also being a young believer, I wasn't understanding, and I was thinking, oh man, if he ain't coming down to my church or whatever no more, then his salvation must not be real, because I did not understand that just because he was not going there, it was not a place that he would be able to get what he needed. Therefore, it needed to be at that division. A lot of people say the most segregated time of the week is during Sunday. If you're still in the Christian church and you still believe Sunday is, the rightful day, whatever. But they say it's the most segregated time. Some things are not always black and white. And the reason I'm saying this is I remember around the late 90s, early 2000s, or really even a little before that, even into some parts of times of the 80s, you start seeing a large exodus of black people moving out of the quote unquote black church into white churches. Why? Why were they doing? Because many of them had got tired of the sermonizing and different things. They wanted to be taught. They didn't want to be sermonized week after week, month after month about you need to be saved, you need to be saved. They wanted to learn things. And so you start seeing an exodus of black people. So how can we flip that around now and say that if white people and black people can't come to church together, then something's wrong? No, the problem is because things have got so disconstrued in a lot, in many ways, I can't really blame if I was still in this thing called the Christian church, even though understanding that the Christian church, the Eurocentric thing that we were put in as slaves, was created by them. We just took it and made our little spin on it, but it really came from them. But even with us putting that little spin on it, they can't, Caucasian people and some of our people can't even deal with it. And they're like, man, I gotta get away from this place. So now is it a scriptural reason why, or is it just preference or style or whatever? This is where you have to go to the scriptures, and you also must use spiritual wisdom in order to necessarily rightly divide. Is this division a good thing? One more, and then we're going to move on to the next point. I remember, again, when I was still in the Christian church, and case in point, I was in the Church of God in Christ, me and my family, my wife, and when we came to the end of the road with that, dealing with that situation, me and my wife both agreed we need to come up out of this stuff. This stuff is not of the Most High Yah. At the time, it was a Caucasian pastor, white pastor down in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm not going to say his name, but we used to listen to him on the radio. We kind of, liked what he was saying or whatever. So we said, well, at that time I was still believing, hey, you got to be in some building, you got to be somewhere. So we was actually looking at not relocating to Charlotte, but telling the pastor there, hey, can we come up under you? We'll still be here in Winston. We'll try to come down to Charlotte when we can, but we want to be shepherded by you. So make a long story short, me and my wife, we went down to Charlotte on Sunday to have service with with the pastor. He didn't know we was coming, none of that. But when we got there, we noticed he had a few black people. Because I remember on his radio show, we used to listen to his radio show, he said he had some black members. And seemed like most of them were probably from the islands of Africa. But anyway, after the service, I asked him, I said, can we, I told him, I said, can we, I'm the guy that be coming on your radio show sometimes when you open up the phone lines and me as this. And he said, oh yeah, okay, brother, come on in. And me and my wife went in the office and we told him a situation. I told him I was a minister. I told him what had happened while we was leaving the Church of God in Christ. And he was like, yeah, I understand. It seems like they lost their way or whatever. And I said, well, this is what we would like to do. I explained to him my plan. I wanted to, come up under him. And he said something that shocked me. But when I look back at it later, I understand he was being honest, and I'm glad he did. He said, brother, I would be more than happy to allow you to come and be part of this. He said, from here, it probably might not be what you're really looking for. He said, like, ethnically, like dealing with things like Martin Luther King or dealing with things that's going on in the black community. He said, that's not going to be my concentration, brother. And at the time I was thinking in my mind, I don't now. I was thinking, well, this guy's he kind of racist. But when I look back at it, he was a division between me and you if you came here, because you would be looking for one thing. And this is the direction that I'm going. And I appreciated that, because a lot of times you will see some of these multicultural, multi-ethnic churches where this issue will pop up, and one side or the other is going to have to be kind of silent on it. It's not going to work. It wouldn't work. Can you imagine the multi-ethnic, multicultural churches the day after George Floyd happened? And you had black people in there where maybe the leadership was white. How and they had never dealt with. I said, well, we ain't gonna deal with none of this ethnic stuff. How are you gonna deal with that? With it wouldn't. It would. It, either somebody's gonna just gross over, or they're gonna have their own explanation. I can remember, and I promise we're gonna move on to the next point. But again, when I was in a Christian church, one of the persons that we used to watch a lot was Rod Parsley. And Rod Parsley, he definitely had a multi-ethnic, multicultural church. And in fact, some of his best ministers in his church were Black. And I remember it was around the late 90s, early 2000s, when, you know, a lot of racial issues and stuff started popping up. And I can remember Rob Parsley one time on his broadcast saying something to the effect that, and he had all his Black ministers. It wasn't a ministers conference, but for whatever reason, all the ministers that were in his thing were sitting on the front row of, because he had different churches that had opened up around the country. And so one of the guys that was one pastor of one of his bigger churches outside of Columbus, Ohio, was a Black dude. I remember because he used to wear cowboy boots and he used to come on the show. Rob Parsons said, you know what? I'm so sick and tired of this thing. People getting offended when they say the N word. And I said, what? And when he said that Black guy, that Black pastor, he kind of looked at him like, I don't know if he should have said that. Can you imagine the conversation that they probably had, if they had the conversation? But I'm saying is the fact that Rob Parsley, for years, there have been more and more things that have come out to kind of show that Rob Parsley had, you know, he might have, he got that streak in him. He has that streak in because he in that vein of John Hagee and all this thing with the, you know, with the what's going on with Israel and you know, also the MAGA and everything. And so this is what's be able to discern and not try to push the envelope and say, no, we got to make this thing work, because it does not necessarily mean that every disagreement and every division is from the devil. It could be that Yah is allowing it because it's just not time, you know, for this to happen. It's the same situation with us as Black people. When we talk about, man, why come we can't unify? Why come we can't do this? Well, if you believe like I believe that we are the people, we understand that the Most High Yah said when he kicked us out the land of Israel, we are the original Israelites. We are the Hebrews. We are the ones of the 12 tribes that he said, I'm going to scatter you all around the world, right? And you ain't coming back together again until my son, Yeshua, the Messiah, when he comes back, reunites them. But there will be a clamoring for unity there, but it's not going to be a substantial uh, um, complete thing until my son makes it happen, right? Not to say that we don't want to, but you can try to unify. And it's not to say that we shouldn't, but we have to also, we have to look at that, because we know it's got to be something that's supernatural that's not allowing it to happen, because it's not time yet. But we're going to get to that later. The second point we want to talk about is biblical examples when Yahuwah himself initiated division. We can go to Judges, the 9th chapter, verse 23. This is during the time right after Joshua passed, and and Israel was being ruled by what they call judges. This let's see, this Judges 9 and verse 23. So let's go there, and that says, then Yahuwah sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the men of Shechem, and the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech. Now, in this situation, because it's just too long to read all of these scriptures, you probably you can go back at your leisure and read it. But this all deals with the Gideon, the judge that judged Israel. You remember Gideon and his 300 and the lamps. Well, chapter 9 is a continuation somewhat of that, in that after Gideon had gave Israel their deliverance, he had many children, and he did have some children by a concubine. And in the situation where the one of the children of the concubine got upset, of being a child of a concubine, he got upset and basically deceived the people, the citizens of Shechem, into making him their king. And one of the survivors of Gideon's other sons that survived, they basically told him, hey, this alliance that you made with the son of the concubine, it ain't gonna last. And so what happened was, because what Abimelech, who was the son of Gideon's concubine, Zerubbabel, as they called him, he deceived the people into believing him to make him king, because it was a evil alliance. It said here that Yah sent an evil spirit amongst the citizens of Shechem to deal treacherously with Abimelech. In this situation, this was not from the devil. This was Yah saying, in order to judge Abimelech for what he did to the sons of Gideon or Zerubbabel, I'm going to stir up the people of Shechem against him, and then him against the people of Shechem. And if you continue to read throughout the preceding chapters, you'll see in the end, they both ended up destroying one another because Yah sent that division. So in this situation, yes, more than likely, yes, we know that Yah does use evil angels also to do his bidding. We can see that with the story, I think is in First Kings, with the prophet. I can't think of his name, right? Micaiah. Yeah, where he had the vision and he said he seen in heaven, and I think we're gonna get to that one. I think we might. Yeah, we're gonna get to that. So I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but yeah, sometimes y'all will do that, and that's going to be one of our examples. So I'm not going to go into that right now. We'll get to that later. But in this situation, y'all sent a evil spirit to deceive, to cause division between. And sometimes, you know what? It's just, y'all will he'll let things happen like that, right? He'll allow things to happen to, like I said, to part sometimes, in order for two evil individuals to destroy one another. I think about what is it? It was two armies. I think one time they was coming against Israel. I think it might have been the Syrians and the Edomites. I don't quote me on that, but it was two different armies. They had came together, but the Bible said Yah sent a troubling spirit in the middle of the camp, and he said the two armies, all of a sudden they draw their swords, and they just started fighting amongst each other. And about time Israel got on the battlefield, they had wiped each other out. Sometimes Yah will do that to your enemies. He'll let a couple of your enemies come together, thinking that they're gonna plan to bring about your demise, and he'll actually cause a division or troubling amongst them, where they'll turn their swords and stuff on each other. And by the time you get there, the whole situation is taken care of. He will do that. He can cause a division as an act of divine justice, or to expose corruption with the leadership or community. And that goes back to what I said earlier with what's going on with Trump and Elon Musk. Now they're both turning their swords on each other. In the way Elon Musk operates, you know, he did this Doge thing where he was trying to uncover all this stuff in the government. Now he's, of course, turning that sword on Trump, and now he's out here talking about, you know, Trump, you know, he was part of Epstein's plot and scheme and everything. So you know what is going to be the next step for Trump, since he is the president of the United States, and you know he has the CIA and FBI at his beck and call. Don't be surprised if some legal stuff come up on Elon Musk. Don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if, you know, he makes a swift uh, um, uh, uh, departure from the ranks of the billionaires down to millionaires when he get through with some of the court cases and stuff that Trump could possibly. You see what he's doing to all these district attorneys and people that tried to put him in jail when he got out of his presidency. What is he doing? He's sending his FBI agents and CIA agents and all them all around the world to find dirt on them to try to put them in prison. And so if Elon Musk was smart, he would probably just stop where he is at. But I hope he don't, so that they will mutually destroy one another, because neither one of those guys mean us as Black people, as Hebrew people, any good. The next example where we want to see where Yahuwah initiated division is 1 Samuel 16, verses 14 through 15. And he said, now the spirit of Yahuwah had departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from Yahuwah tormented him. In this scripture, this is where we know that he had been anointed by Samuel. In fact, let me go back and read that, and let me read that again, because you didn't get both verses. 16, 14, and 15. I'm sorry. He said, but the spirit of the master departed from Saul, and the evil spirit from the master troubled him. And Saul's servant said unto him, behold, now an evil spirit from Yahuwah troubleth thee. In this case, again, Yahuwah sent an evil spirit to bring judgment upon Saul for his disobedience and all the different things that he had done. He was not in divine favor of Yah anymore. Therefore, Yah removed that, his spirit, the Holy Spirit departed from Saul, and then an evil spirit came to trouble him. And you can remember in the New Testament with Yeshua, where he talked about if you don't, if Yah forgive you, but then you turn around and somebody asks you forgiveness and you don't give it to them, that he said he would send tormentors, and those tormentors would not leave you until they had got their money's worth. Basically, he would allow it. And I'm a witness to that in my own life, in some situations of unforgiveness, and I can attest to that if torment you, it's not saying not get justice for things that are done with you through the means of the law, but I'm saying you have to in situations you have to get to that point where you release that, or else you will get tormented, and it will be from Yah to allow the tormentors to come in to torment you. And so you have to be aware of that again, that Yah can bring different divisions and different things in your life if you don't adhere to what his word says. It will cause a division. It will cause a division. Another example is the one we was going into previously, but now we're going to get to it, and that's coming from First Kings, the 22nd chapter, and that's dealing with the prophet Micaiah with Ahab, when Yah wanted to finally judge Ahab and Jezebel, and Ahab had got together with Jehoshaphat, and they was going to go out to battle against another king, uh, uh, which they was going to go against Syria. And so what shouldn't have happened is that Ahab didn't need to go out to battle with him, but also the fact that Yah did not like the fact that righteous Jehoshaphat was teaming up here with wicked Ahab. So Yah had to bring a division here. In this verse here, 1 Kings 22 and 23, it says, "Now therefore, behold, the master has put a lying spirit in the mouth of all these thy prophets, and the master has spoken evil concerning thee." In this situation, after Micaiah had told them the vision, because Jehoshaphat was like, "Hey, before we go out, let's see what your prophets say." Right. And when he brought out the lying prophets, Jehoshaphat was, at least had enough spiritual awareness to understand, nah, I don't believe what these ones are saying. So he said, "You got any more?" And then he said, "Yeah, I got Micaiah," but he'll never prophesize anything. In this case, when he came out, he gave them the vision, and he told them, "I seen in heaven where Yah has judgment in store for you." But and what by this himself away from Ahab after he heard what the prophet said, but for whatever reason, even though he told him, Jehoshaphat still went out there to battle with Ahab. And then what was even more crazy was Ahab was able to convince Jehoshaphat to put on his clothes so that the enemy would think that he was Ahab and that he was somebody else. And for whatever reason, Jehoshaphat just, I'm sorry, not Jehoshaphat listened to him. And whatever happened, he didn't part himself away from Ahab. And it was just the mercy of the Most High Yah that he did not get destroyed, because they came after him, Ahab, even though he was trying to disguise himself. But Jehoshaphat got away on his chariot and went back down to Judah. And, after that, understood this partnership that I had with Ahab was not of the Most High Yah. And Yah was trying to part us up. He was trying to cause division. He was trying to cause confusion. But for whatever reason, I was drinking the Kool-Aid when he said, "You are flesh of my flesh, and we brothers," and all these things. And Yah was trying to say, no, evil spirit is in the mouth of his prophets and lying to you that y'all gonna go out and win. You ain't gonna win. Ahab, you gonna die. And just again, this goes back to we must use discernment. Sometimes maybe if a person in another ministry and ministering on one thing, and then you see everybody else jump on the bandwagon, that might not be for you. If let's just say it's people that say, hey, we got to do this, we got to do this thing for single women or whatever, right? But see, in your situation, y'all might not be needing you in your ministry to deal with that, because you might have certain people in your ministry that can't dealing with single women. So it would be not a good thing. So you can see where maybe y'all would, maybe cause a division where, okay, they're doing that, but I'm going to be doing this, because it might not be for you to deal with that battle. That might be a battle that Most High had set out for that ministry to do. But then your ministry might be a thing dealing with people that, have foster kids or whatever. And you say, well, this is my ministry dealing with foster kids. But then it might be another ministry that say, hey, that's good, but I can't do. Sometimes y'all keeps things divided, because maybe for such a time as that one that doing what they doing, let them do it. This is such a situation with Ahab. If Ahab wanted to go out and fight against Syria, Jehoshaphat shouldn't have had nothing to do with that, because that didn't have nothing to do with him. The Syrians at that time, as far as I understand, were not at war with Judah. They was at war with Jerusalem, with Israel, the northern kingdom, because they were in sin, and because Yah had sent the Syrians. He had sent the Syrians to punish Israel. So by Jehoshaphat and Judah joining in on it, they was joining in on something that they should not have joined. And therefore, Yah tried to bring the division through the prophet Micaiah prophesying about the lying spirits. But for whatever reason, Jehoshaphat was not picking up on it. So we got to look at things like that. Then we want to go to Matthew, the 10th chapter, verses 34. Christ did not come to bring peace. He did not come to bring peace. Matthew 10 and 34. Okay. 10, 34. Almost there. Okay. 34 and 36. So, send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. For I am come to set a man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's foe shall be they of his own household. In this situation, he was talking about in the scheme of, not the scheme, in the proclamation of the good news that he was bringing, that in especially during that time in Israel, when Yeshua came, right, and you still had those people that were steeped in Judaism, which was not something that Yah had created. He did not, when he gave them the commandments and law, statutes, and commandments on Mount Sinai, it didn't have nothing to do with religion. It didn't, but it had dissolved into that. And now Yeshua was coming to say, look, this, the way you doing things is not the way y'all want them done. And therefore, those that did not want to depart out of Judaism, that would be resistant to it, anyone, because of their great pride in this thing called Judaism, even those in your family, those that were born again and were believers were being kicked out of those families. Reading into the historical accounts, they said that some some of the Hebrew people, families, that if someone believed on Yeshua and got in that way, they would actually hold a funeral and say, this my son or daughter or wife or husband or whatever is dead. I don't even recognize them as being alive now, because they have denied the faith. They have they're reprobate. They believe in this Yeshua, and Yeshua said this is going to divide people. He said, but if you continue on in scripture, he said, but if you love your family members, your mother, father, whoever, more than me, daughter, wife, whoever, you ain't worthy of me. You ain't worthy of me, because in the end conclusion, and it's not to say that you hate your family or anything, but when it comes to the thing of you falling after Yeshua, then you can't let nothing separate you from that. And it's not a arrogant thing. It's not a boastful thing. It's not a terrible thing. It's just that if they want to continue on in the ways of sin, Yah said, I'm going to divide you asunder. You're gonna go in different directions. Is no, the gospel itself bring a kind of division, as it forces individuals to choose loyalty to Messiah over even familial relationships. And that, or even, okay, that you might have people that's in your family that are church goers or assembly goers or whatever, but it's just and it's have to say it, and I've had discussions with many of my family members, and I can say this myself, just having been in the Christian church, the Black community, the Hebrew community, and here in America, and from what I've seen in Africa, what the ones I do believe that are Hebrews, we're very religious people, but we are lost. We're people of habit. We have, that's why we have so many churches on now. The attendance to some of this stuff is going down now, because as you heard in my previous summers, that I believe that this thing called Christianity, whatever it is, the whore of Babylon, that the true assembly of Most High Yah is invisible. It's not to say that people that are in these church buildings, that some of them are not saved, but I think the system, the organization of this thing we call Christianity is the whore, and it's going to be burnt with fire, because the devil, he used it for the purposes that he needed it for, and he don't need it anymore. So now he's burning it with fire, and only those that were a part of the invisible assembly, which is people only, are gonna be able to survive. But those that with this thing called Christianity, the system, when it crashes and burns, then those that was just going for religious purposes anyway, if it's just for good order and discipline or whatever, they were already not really true believers in the sense of, anyway, they just was religious but lost. But now they're just going to go into open demonic rebellion, and that's what you're seeing now. People saying, man, this our point, case in point, I was talking to a family member, that's older than me, and I said, this thing of LGBTQ and stuff, it's been there in the Black community, it's been there in the Black churches, but the thing is, it was openly rejected, but inwardly there was stuff going on. Let's just say that it was not openly accepted. But now, because we getting down to the end of the times, that's now why you seeing the open LGBTQ in the black churches now is there, but soon they're gonna say, well, why are we even doing this stuff, right? They're just gonna drop it all together and just be in open rebellion and just stop trying to play the religious game. That's what they're gonna do. And so this again, is that Yah said he did not come to bring peace when he brought his word and showed us, especially through the writings of Paul, especially when you go to Galatians. Galatians is specific on it breaks it. Okay, so the 10 are good, but when you go into the writings of Paul and others, they break it down into the minutest point, where even like when Yeshua said, it's not just good enough for you to say I didn't commit adultery. He said you cannot even have done it in your mind. See, and that's where people don't want to go. People don't want to go to the book of Galatians to be covetous and all these. Oh, he breaks it down. What does it mean not to kill? What does it mean not murder? What does it mean? Paul breaks it down. He talks about envy, strife, variances, and all these different things, which we're gonna get to, right? He said he breaks it down so that you there's no doubt that hey, this kind of behavior is not going to, it's going to keep you out of the kingdom of Yah. So we've gone over in instances where Yah in the Bible brought the division, but now we're going to go over the instances in the scriptures where Satan causes division, and that goes to one I just got through reading, Galatians, the 5th chapter, starting at verse 20. Galatians, the works of the flesh. Through the works of the flesh, we get divisions and dissensions. That's where he talks about Galatians 5:20, idolatry, sorcery, hatred, contentions, jealousies, selfish ambitions, dissensions, and heresies. The contentions, the dissensions, and all these things. He said that these things that work up into our flesh, this division that rises from fleshly motives like pride, jealousy, or ambition, is carnal and satanically influenced. Now, remember, you gotta understand that sometimes it's a thin line between when Satan is doing it and when Yah is allowing it. In all cases, Yah, if it's happening, he's allowing Satan, but sometimes Satan himself will go specifically to Yah and ask him, can he do it? But in the other cases, I believe it's when Yah will basically contract Satan out, like he did in 1 Kings 22, and tell the evil spirits, I need you to cause this division. But most of the time it's Satan coming before the Father and saying, I want to do this. And then if he has all the parameters where he needs to, then the Father basically let him. And if one is walking in the flesh, then Satan, he has that right. Of course, he's gonna probably still go to the Father, have his evil spirits come to the Father and say, hey, they walking in the flesh, they walking in pride. I want this to happen. I want this to happen. And the Father said, okay, my word says that those who walk in the flesh, this is gonna happen. Yeah, in this case, yeah, you're within your right, Satan, to cause division. You're in your rights to cause dissensions and all these different things because they are walking in the flesh. That's why one must be humble. But again, we also got to recognize that thin line, that sometimes it's not always the case. But in this case, we're saying if you have pride, if you have jealousy, if you have selfish ambitions and that are carnal, that in this carnality, it is fleshly, and it will cause division. And this is coming from Satan himself. You need to understand that. You need to understand that when you see different situations dealing with family, friends, others, one of the things that the devil uses a lot to to keep people that are in cults is that he will use cult leaders or whatever to bring up divisions within your family or friends, or those that might could pull you out and say they of the devil, right? They're of the devil, and therefore, or they might say because they're not um, going to your assembly or whatever, right? A good example is in the New Testament. One time, Yeshua's disciples seen somebody that was not within their 12 that was out, I guess, speaking and preaching about Yeshua, and they went out and tried to stop him, and they went back to Yeshua and told him. He said, "Why you do that? Just because he ain't with us? If he is speaking or preaching something that exalts what I'm trying to do, he is with me. He don't have to be physically here with the 12, but he is with me." So that's not a thing of you trying to stop him. That is, he's still with me. There is no division there. It's just that he's not with us. And then that goes again back to what I was saying some minutes ago, where you might have one ministry doing this and another ministry doing this. It's not always for the other ministry to come along and do the same thing that you're doing. That doesn't mean that y'all are divided. Y'all will have one doing another one and another one. In that case, that is not a division, because you're not on doing the same thing. But what would be is if one is doing another one ministry, and then you over here doing whatever you're doing, but then you going over there meddling with what they're saying, and so you need to be doing this, what, this, that, and another. And I clearly remember in my early years as a believer, I had a burning desire for evangelism, right? And sometimes it could be to the point of being overbearing, because I just felt that everybody, whatever, had to be the same way. But then as I matured and I started understanding that all the gifts gotta operate when they supposed to operate. It's not always for to go out and, say. That's why we had to, certain ministries, pastors have to be very careful if with whatever gift that you have. If you have the gift of, let's just say, pasture, right? And you like, I'm just good at making sure my little sheep here. You might just throw off evangelism, and when evangelists come, you're like, I don't want to deal with that, right? And that's not no good, because you we gotta be about going out to the harvest. But then on the other hand, you might have those that are pastors that have the evangelistic thing, and they just say, we always got to get out here and get more and more people. We got to save more people, and you never deal with the pastoring of that group of flock that you have, and then they just wither away. So you have to be careful of in that sense of the division, because then the devil can get in that too, and make it where, like I said, you'll be in certain churches, and every Sunday all it is preaching about getting saved, getting saved, getting saved. You might have you go in a Sunday, if you still in the Christian faith for the next 20 years or whatever, you don't learn anything. Whereas if you are maybe a pastor that had a gift of pastor and you neglect evangelism, you just got the same little group then, and you don't encourage them to go out and witness or whatever. So you got to have a balance. That's why the Bible said that the gifts of the Spirit are given with all they and as the Spirit gives the utterance, as he gives the motivation, so that we're not supposed to uh, uh, divide all the gifts. You should want them to be functioning amongst that, and not allow that division. And sometimes that's what end up happening, where you have people in that sanctuary, they're like, you know what, I'm just so sick and tired of every Sunday all he talks about is getting saved Sunday after Sunday or Saturday after Saturday or whatever it is, and then you depart and leave. What has to happen is there got to be a balance, because Satan can use this scheming. You can even see it sometimes in how name their ministry. They'll say evangelistic. I did it. The ministry name I had before was Gate Evangelistic Ministries. So I was letting you know, but not that that's bad, but I'm saying there's got to be the shepherding part. It's got to be the you do need a prophetic word, if you want to use that, which I believe the prophetic word is coming out of this, because Peter said there's a more sure word of prophecy coming out of this. So I'm not talking about somebody sitting up there and telling you your horoscope and telling you get ready to, you got the winning numbers to the pick six or something like that. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about speaking to you a right word out of this. That's what I'm saying. And we got to be careful, because like I said, if we walk in the flesh, and we can't walk in the division and the dissensions that are not from Yah, but from Satan himself. James 3 in verse 14, we want to talk about wisdom that is demonic, because sometimes we can think that something is a Yah, but it's not. James 3 and 14 says this. It says, but if we have bitter envy and strife in our hearts, glory not, and lie not against the truth. This wisdom descendeth not from above, but is earthly, sensual, devilish. For where envy and strife is, there is confusion in every evil work. Now, let's remember again that sometimes y'all will contract the devil out to go do that, maybe to part you from some people. But remember, the name of this lesson is Satanic Schemes of Yahuwah's Sovereign Purpose. We got to be able to discern between that, right? But if we discern wrong, that means, and it's not of the Most High Yah, then we are operating in satanic wisdom. If we think that it is that all contentions and stuff that's going on is, that's not from Yah. That's not from the devil, it's from Yah. So we have to be careful of that. Okay, because obviously, yes, when some years ago, when you start seeing a lot of these mainline churches where they start getting these divisions, we don't have to pray about none of that. We know you shouldn't have any dealings with that, right? There's no doubt about it. right? But then one of the other the visions that came about was during the time of Azusa Street. Is when for so many centuries the talking about the Holy Spirit being active in the life of the believer was a thing kind of looked down on. And when Azusa came along, it was a lot of a quote unquote mainline churches that said we divided from that. Now, was everything that came out of Azusa, biblical? I cannot say that, but I think the move toward being led by the Spirit was of the Most High Yah, because at that time the world, the Christianity, even with the fact that I said it was part of that horde, there were believers that were in this thing called higher criticism, where they was basically saying either it is that the scriptures that we're reading are just a fairy tale, or if Yah is still alive, he's moved his hand off of this thing called the Christian church, and we basically gotta move it by reason now. Don't worry about the Spirit. So there was a need for the refocusing on the Spirit come, but what happened was there was too much of a shift to Spirit only, and then whatever, we ain't gonna have nothing to do with it. It was only later on that they have tried to come back together, have tried to come together. One deal with Pentecostalism, and the other one just dealing with what they call orthodoxy. Anyway, but I'm just saying, trying to bring them back together. They're both so mismatched that now this is why you got this thing of tongue speaking Catholics and all this other kind of stuff. And you got the Kundalini, you got people that are LGBTQ that are speaking. It's all messed up. It's all confusion and envying and strife, and it's sensual. It's all devilish. It's confusion. It's not from the Most High Yah. And I would say to you, um, um, mark those that are like that and don't have anything to do with that. Envy and self-seeking exists. Confusion in every evil thing there is. Division is caused by the jealousy, the ambition, the confusion, and the source of all of this is not from above, it's from below. Now, neutral or redeemable agreements between believers, and this kind of goes along with the example I said, where you got one church doing this, but another church doing something else, and they don't feel that the Most High is leading them to do certain things, and some people might look at it and say, why are people divided? It might not be that. And one of the good example we have is coming out of the book of Acts, the 15th chapter, where you have the contention that happened between Paul and Barnabas. Acts 15, verse 36, reads, and we get ready to wrap it up here. So just patient with me for right now. Verse 36, it said, now, and some days after Paul said unto Barnabas, let us go again and visit our brethren in every city where we have preached the word of the master, and see how they do. And Barnabas determined to take with him John, whose surname was Mark. But Paul thought not good to take him with them, who departed from them from Pamphylia, and went not with them to the work. And the contention was so sharp between them that they departed asunder one from another. And so Barnabas took Mark and sailed unto Cyprus, and Paul took Silas and departed, being recommended by the brethren unto the grace of the master. And he went through Syria and Cilicia, confirming the assemblies. In this situation, it was kind of a neutral, a redeemable thing. We know Paul and Barnabas were believers. We know that they were mighty apostles. There was no doubt about it. But we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the excellence of the power might not lie in us, but in Yah. And in this situation, we can maybe say that maybe one or both of them were walking in the flesh, and that Paul, felt, hey, you got to dot your I's and cross your T's. You came with us, you didn't stay, so next time you can't come. But then you look at Barnabas, whose name meant son of consolation. He probably was looking at the fact that not just that John Mark is my nephew, but also, Paul, when you was kind of fumbling around in Tarsus making tents, because Most High Yah sent me up there to bring you back down, or bring you down to Antioch to be around among the brethren to prove your ministry. And then me and you went out. And so now you got to get that same grace to my nephew Barnabas, and Paul wasn't having it. So we kind of got to maybe believe it, maybe that Most High Yah, because I think Paul one time said, he said, some things that Yah have me to say by commandment, and then some things I say because I have permission. I think in this situation, Yah let this happen. Can't say that it was not of the flesh, but I believe it had to happen because the ministry of Paul was going to go up to even a higher level when he got with Silas, and also the ministry of John Mark was going to go to a higher level when he got with Barnabas, because if you know, the book of Mark was written by John Mark. So it was sort of like maybe y'all might have just been standing back and say, you know what, I'm not going to speak on this either way. Because I know it's going to be for the betterment of the gospel. So we definitely should not want to bring about contentions, but then sometimes we got to look at it again. Like I said, sometimes y'all will have maybe, like I said, two different ministries or ministers, some try to get together and it just don't work out because maybe the one is crossing over into an area that y'all don't need him to, and vice versa, and he just needed, hey, you do what you're doing right there, you do what you're doing right there, you can come together for whatever fellowship or whatever, but don't try to always switch out. You will find those that are in ministry that y'all can sometimes fit hand in glove, but even that for a season might eventually move away. That's what happened with Paul and Barnabas. It was time for them to separate. So the sharp contention, while it was not ideal, was redeemed for a greater impact in ministry, because we know Paul himself even said in one of the epistles that John Mark is a good man for the ministry. Yes, I recommend him. And so we have to look at that, and it's the same. This is something that we definitely got to understand too, that it will come, but that doesn't mean that later on we can't come back together and reconcile with one another. Now, we want to know, I want how to discern the source of division. Below is a comparison. Well, I'm not below because I don't have it on the screen, but I got a passing written down here on how you can tell if it was Yah and if it was Satan. Okay, so motive. What is the motive? If the motive is from Yahuwah, it'll be about purification. It'll be about judgment. It'll be about maybe a missional shift. If the motive is from Satan, it'll be about pride, jealousy, and confusion. If it's about results, if it's from Yahuwah, it'll be about greater holiness, exposure of sin, the spread of the truth. If the results are from Satan, it's going to be about bitterness, stagnation, loss of witness. If it's about for spiritual affirmation, if it's for Yahuwah, we can look at Judges 9, Matthew 10, Acts 15, and some of the other scriptures that I gave you. For Satan, for spiritual affirmation on that, we would look at Galatians 5, James 3, 10 through 13. For peace and clarity, if it's from Yahuwah, after division, truth emerges, right? So like if it's Yah sent the division, then truth emerges. Like if you got fellowship, if you got unfruitful fellowship with the works of darkness, people that's really draining you, a witness, draining you from being able to achieve what Yah wants you, and he divides you from that. He said after they move out your life, then truth will emerge. If it's for peace and clarity, and it's from Satan, after the division, there will be chaos in your life. Now, that's not to say that sometimes, okay, let me put it this way. Let's just say you a single man or a single woman that say you're a believer. This is going to say you say, but you shacking up. You know you shouldn't be shacking up. You know you shouldn't be shacking up. But you're not ready to get married. You know you should be married. You know you shouldn't be shacking up. That just say that finally one or both of you say, hey, we got to part. So there might be financial difficulties after you, which some would consider to be chaos. But truth will emerge. Either that it was never meant for you and that person to even be married together, and he'll bring somebody in your life, or maybe financially he'll make a way for you to be able to subsist on your own, and then either they'll bring y'all back together in righteousness, or bring you together with somebody that is righteous. So application, Romans 16 and 17. Let's go there. Romans 16, 17. It says here, now I beseech you, brethren, mark them which cause divisions and offense contrary to the doctrine which ye have learned, and avoid them. Okay, then let's go to Ephesians 4 and 3. Excuse me. It said, endeavoring to keep the unity of the spirit in the bond of peace. Let's go to Titus. Excuse me again. Go to Titus 3 and 10. And it reads, a man that is an heretic after the first and second admonition reject. These scriptures provide framework for how we are to respond to division. All right. There's steps for a believer. Pray for wisdom. James 1 and 5. Let's go there real quick. These are steps for a believer dealing with division. 1 and 5 says this. It says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of Yahuwah that giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. Then let's go to Matthew 7. Matthew 7 and 16. And it reads, moreover, when ye fast, be not as, no, 7. Okay. Ye know them, ye shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs or thistles? That's for a believer on how to recognize people that bring about division. Consult the word and mature believers. Rebuke or separate as needed. Embrace division if truth demands it, which is Jude 3. And go there. And almost done. Jude 3. Oh. Okay. Beloved, when I gave all diligence to write unto you of the common salvation, it was needful for me to write unto you and exhort you that ye should earnestly contend for the faith which was once delivered unto the saints. And that's actually where I got the name for this, exhort to contend for this faith, right? Even if it, vision is not always a sign of faith. It can be a tool for purification, revelation, or redirection. The believer must discern whether Yahuwah is redefining his people or whether Satan is undermining him by remaining grounded in Scripture and walking by the Spirit. The assembly can navigate division with discernment, grace, and courage. Determine whether a disagreement is a result of sin or a divine redirection. What are the dangers of assuming all division is bad or demonic? And how can Yahuwah use division for judgment or purposes in the examples given? As you navigate this thing, because we are living in a time, it's got to be very careful today, right? Because we do need to be in fellowship with many like-minded believers as we can, but we also got to remember that we are living in a time of the wilderness, where just like he said, when you're walking down a narrow path, there's going to be few people that's going to find the path. So you might be on that path for a long time. So with that, I'm going to ask you again to give this video a thumbs up. I'm going to ask you to please subscribe. I'm going to ask you to leave a comment. I'm going to ask you to continue to pray my stream.